Yo, what's good YouTube? It's boardzy, and if you have been following mice for a while now, you have probably heard people asking Logitech to make a mini version of the GPX Superlight shape or a Superlight version of the G703. And while Logitech does not seem to want to do that, I do have two 3D printed mice from Piranha Mouse Mods that are exactly that. So this is the 10% smaller version of the GPX shape, and this is the G703 Superlight. A big selling point of these 3D printed mice is their weight. So compared to the original, the G703 Superlight is 60 grams, while the original is 93 grams. So that is a huge weight reduction. And the GPX Mini is, I believe, 53 grams compared to 62 on the real GPX Superlight, so not as massive of a change. The big thing with the GPX Mini is obviously going to be that smaller shape for people who want a smaller version of the GPX for whatever reason. Me, with large hands, I would honestly say that this shape does feel a bit small, especially a bit narrow. I was still able to get a grip of it for claw grip, and I do think it is a massively improved shape compared to the original GPX for fingertip. But for claw grip, just using the GPX, I've been perfectly fine with that, so it's not really an upgrade for me. It's just a smaller and lighter version of the same shape. Obviously 3D printed, so it's not going to have the same brick-like quality, but this is actually a member of the Pro collection, so it has a split-off top shell and just a bit more like rigid feeling build than I am used to with 3D printed mice. You can see if you squeeze it, it's obviously going to flex. That's just the nature of 3D printed parts. They're not going to be as rigid as like this ABS plastic. But I've been pretty happy with the build on this Mini GPX, while with the G703 Superlight, I do have a flexing issue on the left side. It really takes barely any pressure, and I can get the top side button to activate. I've actually had this happen to me in game, just like while swiping the mouse and putting pressure. So that is an issue with the G703 Superlight, but no matter how hard I squeeze, I cannot get the side buttons to activate on the GPX Mini. So I'm definitely more satisfied with the build on this mouse. Additionally, the clicks just do have a better quality feeling with the split off shell. Both mice come installed with Kill 4.0 switches, but the GPX Mini actually has two screws that allow you to adjust the tensioning of the clicks, and I have actually made it so the left click just feels as snappy as it can, really light actuation and a fast rebound, and I just left the right click alone. I really don't know if the difference will be noticeable at all on camera, but it's slightly noticeable in game, and it just seems like all around the click quality has improved with the Pro series. The only issue is some slight wobble if you really look for it and like apply pressure, but there's no issues with grinding in game, and just the overall feeling for a 3D printed mouse is impressive. They're light but still tactile and have a fast feeling, so just solid for a 3D printed mouse. The G703 Superlight does have a lot more stiff feeling clicks, and you cannot adjust the tensioning on this model. I'm not sure if it's because it uses G603 internals instead of the G305, but yeah, this does have the old generation of clicks, and there's also a lot more room for post-travel, and the grinding, it's really not an issue on this copy either, but the clicks are definitely a bit stiff and heavier and harder to spam, despite being the same switch. So all around quality wise, I do have to give the edge to the GPX Mini, and it just makes it a really unique wireless small mouse. That's kind of what you have to look at this as. It's just the same GPX shaped design, but smaller and lighter. I'm sure there is a market of people who are interested in that. I do think if Logitech were to actually make a version of this shape, it wouldn't be 10% smaller. It would probably be more like 5% smaller, because this is a really small mouse. A lot of people look at the Hottie S as sort of a smaller GPX, but you can see compared to the Piranha Mouse Mods Mini GPX that the Hottie S is bigger in both width and height. The length is very similar. I think the GPX Mini is a bit longer, but the Hottie S definitely feels larger and has more flair when it is actually in your hand. One problem I actually have with the mouse being so small is accessing this back side button. As you can see, I have to grip the mouse basically towards the top, and it just makes accessing it pretty hard, but I was still able to use this mouse in Fortnite and perform fine. But for me personally, I am more comfortable with the standard GPX shape. The increased weight is noticeable, but I've never been one to be like lighter, smaller mice are always better. I do think there is a market for this. I think the feeling is all around really good for a 3D printed mouse, but compared to the GPX, I do not prefer it more. Another thing to note is that the scroll wheel is very low profile. You see it doesn't really protrude that much on the GPX Mini, and the coating on these Piranha Mouse Mods mice is going to feel pretty gritty, but not rough, and it's not something I'm really going to complain about because it gives you a good grip of the mouse, but it's not going to feel like smooth, like coated plastic, obviously. They do provide grip tape, which is very sticky in the box as well. But yeah, that's about all for the GPX Mini part of this video. Now I'm going to talk about the G703 Superlight. It will be a bit shorter since the shape is obviously the same. Like I said earlier, the G703 is 33 grams lighter than the original from Logitech, so that is undeniably a massive difference in hand. And it's pretty crazy to think that a mouse this big is the same weight, if not a few grams lighter, compared to a normal GPX. So if you have loved the G703 shape and just really want a lighter version of it, this is what you're looking for. It just, at least in this case on my copy, comes at the expense of quality. Like I mentioned before, just basically putting no pressure and I get the side buttons to activate, which is really not what you want when this pre-built from Piranha Mouse Mods is going to cost you around 3 times the price of just a standard G703 Superlight. So unless you're just palm gripping and putting barely any pressure, it's really tough to recommend for me. But if you have always loved the shape and just want to feel a lighter version, picking up a mod kit for $90 and assembling it yourself would probably be your best bet. Also, this mouse is pretty front heavy. As you can see, there's just not a lot going on towards the back. Depending on where you grip it, the weight balancing will feel different, obviously. But unless you're palm gripping, it's just hard to give this mouse a general recommendation. I do like that they kept the G703 side buttons. Like, the actual feel of the side buttons is great. It is just way too easy to activate them by putting pressure on the side. And the click feeling, there's a lot more variance in the left click and right click feel, and there's not much you can do about it. So I would like to see them update this with the split shell design and just the same features as the Mini GPX, because I think for the same price, the Mini GPX just feels like a far better mouse in hand. So I personally really wanted to like the G703 Superlight, but it just fell short quality-wise. Both of these mice are using Logitech's internals. The G703 is using G603 internals, while the Mini GPX uses G305 internals. Those are tried and true sensors. Like, the performance is fine. I'm not going to go into detail about Logitech sensors, but one thing to note is that the sensor position definitely does feel a bit low on the GPX Mini, but mainly that is because of how high I'm gripping it towards the top. But yeah, I honestly don't have too much else to say about the G703 Superlight. I do think that buying the standard G703 and throwing on some aftermarket skates, whether it be like Tiger Ice or glass skates, which I'm a big fan of on heavier mice, I just think that will all around be better quality feeling. At the end of the day, the mouse was not completely unusable, but it just did not feel premium in hand or even like premium for a 3D printed mouse, which I think the GPX Mini did. So if this ever gets the Pro Series update, I think it could be a bit more viable as a Superlight G703 replacement, but for now it's not a huge recommendation of mine. The last thing to really talk about is battery life and charging. As you can see, there is a rechargeable battery inside the mouse, and you just charge it with this magnetic charger. It is honestly seamless. You obviously cannot use the mouse while it is charging, so that is one thing to consider, but I don't think anybody buying a 3D printed mouse is only going to have one mouse on hand, let's be real. But the battery life is actually exceptional. I have had to charge this mouse once in around 2 weeks of testing. So it's pretty insane. The G703 Superlight I did not put as much time on, but it has not died on me either. So the battery life, the charging, and the wireless tech are all good on these 3D printed mice. They also come with core pads, I believe, stock, and the glide is really solid on them. No complaints about that, just like solid PTFE skates, but obviously you can put whatever you want on the base of this mouse. So that is going to be all for my review of these two mice. They obviously do offer a lot more than just these two shapes. Basically any mouse you can think of, there is a 3D printed and lightweight version of it. So if that appeals to you, make sure to check it out. You can also get the mod kits where you install it yourself for significantly cheaper, and I think you can save 10% with code boardzy. I usually don't like plug my codes, but you can save a pretty good bit of money considering these are more expensive mice. But yeah, that's going to be all for the review. These are nothing that really dethrone the standard Logitech mice in my opinion, but I'm not going to hate on the innovation and the improvement of these 3D printed mice. So that's going to be all. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and peace.